What's going on, everybody? This is Chip Walton. Welcome to Chop and Brew, where we continue and are slowly nearing the end of our Better Judge a Mead interview series, the B-Jam. This week's interview is the fifth of six interviews where National Mead Maker of the Year Josh Holbrook is talking with some of the home mead world's greatest minds about all things judging mead, all things making mead at sometimes, and definitely all things mead appreciation. And this week, we've got some real talk for y'all from Carvin Wilson. Among Carvin's many credits, Mead Maker of the Year from both AMMA and AHA, he's a member of the AHA Governing Committee, co-founder of the Mead Institute, home competition organizer for the Mazer Cup. Plus, this man has the most epic stockpile of honeys from all over the world. Check this out. This is just a sample of what's inside his house. Dude also keeps an off-site storage unit filled with that sweet, sweet honey from all over the world. That's a honeybee baller right there. As you're about to see and hear, Carvin also has a lot of strong opinions about mead judging and competition specifically. In their conversation, he and Josh discuss many topics, including regional bias, what it is and how to recognize it, mead styles that suffer from lack of judge experience, bad habits of judges and competition organizers, why some mead makers need to stop entering and actually judge. And one of my favorite points he makes is finding the beauty in a mead before you start searching for the flaws. Carvin and Josh also taste and kind of informally judge a mead called 9 Deaths from Lost Cause Meadery. This mead is made with 9 different peppers and avocado blossom honey. Real quick for all you BJCP folks out there, you can actually earn non-judging points for watching all of these B-Jam videos, including this one. So if you want to see how that works, check out the link in this video description or in any of the video descriptions from the previous Better Judge a Mead videos. Speaking of strong opinions, next week for the B-Jam finale, Josh talks with the one and only Dr. Fat Propa, aka Lunchbox, aka Chris England. Y'all know Chris. He's been in past episodes of Brewing TV, Chop and Brew. He's a home brewer turned pro brewer and distiller, world-renowned speed talker, proud Hungarian citizen, lover of sausages, and oh yeah, he happens to be the education director of the BJCP. So you know that is going to be a jam-packed final conversation for the B-Jam series. Before we get buzzing along, we got to give a shout out to our ongoing sponsor, Imperial Yeast. Their limited edition Kvike strain Bartleby is probably on its way out of your local homebrew shop, so check in and get your hands on it before it's gone for the season. And as always, my honeybees over at Patreon, the Patreon party people. Join them in supporting the show at patreon.com/chopandbrew.
All right, I got Carvin Wilson with me tonight. We're going to have a discussion here on some topics that I think are pretty tailored to him. So thanks for being with me tonight, Carvin.
You're welcome. I appreciate the invite.
Yeah, for sure. So I think to jump in right out of the gate, I want to jump into the topic of bias. I think you in particular have drawn a fair amount of attention to regional bias in competitions. So the idea that certain regions have a bias toward liking certain styles or certain levels of sweetness. So what's your take on this? And do you think it's entirely a negative thing?
Yes and no, but before I start on bias, I gotta give some emphasis to, if you're gonna be good at golf, you gotta go hit golf balls. If you're gonna be good at baseball, you got to go to the batting cages. You got to take some fielding practice. Part of bias is, right or wrong, is people only sample meads from their local area. They don't want to put in the work. You know, they want to be the best. They want to be the best chiropractor. They want to be the best doctor. They want to be the best computer programmer, and they're willing to train themselves on that. But when it comes to taste, sensory analysis, you know, folks don't want to educate themselves on that subject. So that inherently creates, in my opinion, once again, my opinion, it creates bias. So what is regional bias? Regional bias to me is you're basically just used to tasting stuff in your area. And there's nothing wrong with that, but at the same time, you got to understand that, your palate is going to be accustomed to that. So when you taste something new or when you judge something new that's completely different outside of your friend's mead, your mom's mead, or your best friend's mead that you think is the best mead in the world, it creates bias. Bias is a natural part of judging. If you ask me, you'll get a lot of people's like, I don't like sour beers. Well, that's great. You don't like sour beers. You can ask not to be judging sour beers, but if you are put in front of a sour beer as a professional, if you're a grandmaster and you're asked to judge sour beers, you got to put your bias aside and be able to judge the body of work that is in front of you. So yes, I think that there is such a thing as regional bias, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just something that just needs to be recognized.
Do you think regional, because I'm curious about the idea that this bias is like a region as a whole, because to me it seems like just the odd luck or chance of which judge your mead happens to land in front of at that particular competition. If it would have gone past to the next guy, maybe he likes dry and this is a sweet, or vice versa. So I mean, you think there's a regional, you think it's really like as a block like this, or is it more individual? Certain judges have certain biases.
I don't think it's a region as a whole. So when I say regional bias, let me clarify that even more. I think certain judges have bias. Let's take the infamous, oh God, help me out, Grandmaster Al. He's been on the record a few times saying that he doesn't like Metaphone.
Yeah. And
you know what?
Recently found out.
You're effing Grandmaster Judge. Get over it. People look up to you. You can't say stuff like that at a comp. That's bullshit. So yeah, people have individual biases, and I think it's not a region as a whole, more so comps. And I think when grandmaster and higher ranking judges and people of stature in the mead beer cider community, they get together and people are looking up to them, they have to understand what they say, how they act, and how they perceive things will have impacts on folks, whether they want to admit it or not. Those who, with great power and great knowledge comes great responsibility. I'm very aware of what I say when I'm around people. Although I do speak frankly and I don't lie to people, I am still very aware of what I say and understand that my words have repercussions, and they can influence how someone will think, especially when it comes to honey or meat making in general. I rarely ever go on the record saying that I hate a honey. Well, just because I might not like a honey, I might not like how it turned out in a given mead, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad honey. It just means that I'm not the artist to conquer that body of work yet. That's all that means.
Yeah, I don't think we have to be that coy about ever saying that there's a honey that we don't prefer. But I hear what you're saying, where it's easy for there to be the mead judging gospel according to this person, that they can have this legacy where people listen to them, and especially judges that run training sessions, study sessions for people that are studying for, say, the mead exam. So they're going to take after the person who led those sessions, the person that they respect, and kind of do things according to that person. I think that's natural, but what I think we got to do is really get people to take that mantle of educating themselves and work on that themselves. To like you said, you got to go to the batting cages, you got to do the work yourself, not just take spoon fed what that person told you. This is when I spoke with Ken Tram recently on one of these videos, he just emphasized the point that we as a community, we got to really be rigorous and serious about this if we want to be taken seriously as a mead community. So I think calling out things that you need to change, think it's a good thing. I think I want to jump over to styles. So given that there's a broad range of experience levels between people who've been judging mead, so people that have done it for a long time versus people that are really new at it, do you think with certain styles of mead, there's certain styles that really suffer from a lack of judge experience? Maybe people haven't had much of that style, or they have a misconception about it?
I think it's all of the above. And when I say all of the above is, once again, it gets back to practice, different strokes for different folks. But you know what, if I'm going to make a style, something that I'm not familiar with, I'm going to get on Vino Shipper, go to friends, do as much research and tasting on that style, even if it's a fruit that I haven't used before, and I'm going to do my research. So I don't think that there's an issue with the styles as a whole per se. I think you can find well-made styles at any home and professional comp. It once again, it goes back to the individual creator of the mead may not really understand the style and not doing their research. But I think there's enough information that's out there, especially in today's day and age, making meads 10, 12 years ago, compared to making it today, some of the research, these kids have it easy. I'm not saying that I walked uphill in the snow 5 miles with a cigarette in my mouth and a 30-pound backpack to school. But at the same time, you got award-winning mead makers at every turn answering questions for kids these days. And you didn't have that 10, 12 years ago.
Yeah, I agree.
So the information.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And I think it doesn't, in my opinion, it doesn't get any better than modern mead makers. I think there's no, consistently reliable source of mead information about technique and process that's as reliable and accurate as that forum, from what I see. So when I'm speaking about styles, so picture if you were to line up 100 mead judges, do you think there's certain styles in particular, whether it be sizer, piment, Polish, dry stuff, do you think there's certain styles that these judges need to put the work in on that they haven't already? Is there any one certain style you want to call out?
So one clarification that we got to establish first, are we talking about styles in regards to the BJCP?
I think for now, yes. Just looking at those stylistic categories according to BJCP for now as a discussion.
Well, that's part of the problem. The BHCP, the BJCP in regards to mead is a clusterfuck, and it needs to be updated. That's part of the problem. But if you want me to pick out some styles that I think that people have issues with, I would say first the historical and the Polish meads, because that guideline needs to be tightened up. There's a lot of misconceptions on sizers. And then my third would be piment. I think traditionals, the berries, the methaglens, the melomels, stone fruit, folks do a really decent job with those. But there's a lot of misconceptions with sizers. Got to be 50%. Got to be 50% apples. Yes, that's all bullshit.
I think all the hybrid styles you can say that of, right? Like Braggot, Piment, Sizer. I mean, people want to plant their flag on 1%, right?
If it was me, I would alleviate the Braggot style altogether. That's just me. But I agree with you in regards to Braggots.
I want to ask more specifically about Polish. I know that there are efforts to write a more specific guideline for Polish, and I think that's going to be coming out fairly soon from people that I've talked to. Because right now, if you just look at the guidelines with historical category, there's really nothing specific to Polish in there. It's just listed that it's one of the possibilities. So can you, gospel according to Carvin, what do you think a Polish mead should look like if one comes across your table? I mean, what parameters are you looking for in a good Polish mead?
Well, before I go on this tirade, is not a gospel according to Carvin. It's just my 2 cents, right or wrong. But I will I will put my chops and my mead library and my mead tasting skills against any grandmaster sommelier or any other person on the planet when it comes to mead, you know, whatever their credentials may be. The biggest thing that I am looking for that I find a lot of Americans do wrong, I should not get fresh, abundant fruit in a Polish mead. It just pisses me off. You know, it's supposed to be, you know, I can tell you blended that. The fruit's supposed to be a supporting character. There's supposed to be some oxidation there. You know, I'm looking for faded fruit, but still fruit character. And I'm looking for oxidation in a pleasant way. And now that, you know, the Polish mead style has become popular, come on, people are just mixing shit. They're not doing it the right way, in my opinion. So part of that is the guidelines let you do that. It doesn't say anything about faded fruit or, you know, should have certain levels of oxidation or this, that, and the other. But you know what? You add a new beer like they did the Catherine whatever. They laid that shit out. They laid that shit out quick. But no, meat's just the redheaded stepchild with the BJCP. You know, I hope this shit does go on their website so they can understand that, you know, hey, people who make mead pay your dues too. You know, hey, we're judges too. We should get some love in, and don't you dare blame it on COVID, because this shit's been going on for like 8 years.
Yeah, I think because I've felt really lost when I think I did get seated to judge historical one time, and I just felt really lost because the guidelines are really non-specific. And even if you just do a search online, you look for any sort of guidance on what should these meads look like, maybe if you've never had one before, and it's really hard. I know Michael Wilcox did a good write-up in Zymergy one time with one of the I think it was an ode to Jadwiga mead. I think he did a long article write-up on that, and that's one of the, I mean, it's not much, but it's one of the best resources I've found for somebody who hasn't had a lot of Polish meads. What does it look like?
Yeah, that mead actually won Mazer Cup Best of Show, and it won NHC the same year. So
that's crazy. To jump back into, you know, individual judge, you know, weaknesses, do you think there's one, you know, we talked about trying to get outside your bubble, try lots of different meads. Do you think there's any other specific weaknesses that you want to highlight for mead judges? Like, hey, here's a blind spot for you. People have got to work on this aspect of judging.
Yeah, they don't know what fruit and honey tastes like, which is the foundation of mead. You know, they all think that, well, you know, I can go in sensory altogether, but they just don't know honeys and they don't know fruits. Once again, they don't practice their craft. That's just my 2 cents. You know, it wouldn't be hard to go to any comp organizer and say, hey, what were the top 20 honeys that were entered last year? So I can brush up and be ready, you know, to ask questions from people who know more than I do. You know, I still run across judges who think orange blossom should taste like oranges. I want to just snap a pencil upside their head when they tell me that. It's like, that's not how orange blossom is supposed to taste. I had a judge tell me one time that avocado blossom doesn't taste like avocados. That happened. So it's just lack of, you know, if once again, they know what cider apples taste like. They know what two-row tastes like. You know, it's just lazy and treating me like a redheaded stepchild. They just don't want to do it. They don't deem it important. You know, I've had every grain. I've eaten every grain that goes into a beer. I've had a large majority of apples. I don't enter a lot of cider comps, but I've made a lot of cider. I make a lot of beer, you know, and I drink a lot of beer. I practice because I owe the person that when I sit in front, their creation, and when I'm filling out that score sheet, I owe them that. This is not some weekend sideline gig for me. that means something to me when I put my name on a score sheet and when I'm giving someone feedback. I take that very seriously. That's why I have a few hundred different honeys. That's why I brew beer. That's why I make cider. That's why I go out to bars. That's why I have over 2,000 meads in my cellar and wines and beers and trade with people, because you got to do the work. Nobody wants to do the work these days.
Yeah,
They just want to go to the judging table, pull up their little style guide, and then pretend they're a pro.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of sensory work that has to be done. I know for me, because I think you're involved with the Mead Institute. I know that they're pretty new, and there's some things that are going to be put out there soon. But I got a peek at the flavor and aroma description kind of cheat sheet to help people, put a vocabulary to some of these descriptors. And even when I look at the berry category there and the say 18 different berries that are listed under there, I can't differentiate the character. I can't tell you the last time I had a Loganberry or Marionberry. So that's work I got to do.
Since you mentioned the Mead Institute, I am one of the founding members of the Mead Institute, along with Ken, Allison, Frank, and Chrissy. So yeah, we are working on mead education because we're tired of waiting around for the AMMA or other organizations to do it. It's like those guys have been promising to do shit for years and shit ain't getting done.
Yeah, I think Ken, when I was talking to him one time, put it best. He's just a fan of, let 1,000 flowers bloom. Like, you know what? We shouldn't just wait for one guiding body to do the work on this stuff. Like, the more people who pitch in, the more entities that contribute to advancing our mead culture, the better.
I agree.
So specifically talking about judging and judge habits, are there any specific habits that you see judges doing that drive you nuts that you want to see change? I might have pulled a pin on a grenade on this one, but
well, there's a ton. You know what? I think there's too much talking at the tables. For one, that drives me crazy. People need to keep their conversations to a table level, because you don't know who you're influencing by your words. You could be influencing the mini boss judge or something about that. I think there's too much talking away from the tables to where people go back and be like, oh man, I had this awesome raspberry mead in my flight. You know what? You're influencing people by saying that, just shut the hell up. Just keep your conversations to the table, shut the hell up, and just talk about it later. So too much talking. I think organizers need to do a better job before the competition of educating people on what they are about to judge and making sure that people are qualified to judge. We all go through this little calibration exercise. Well, I'm not saying all comps, but a lot of comps go through this calibration exercise. But it's kind of like a token. I think you should actually look at those score sheets and see if people are full of shit and don't let them judge. Why go through the exercise if you're not going to use it? I think there's a lot of high-ranking judges who just should retire because they don't know what the hell they're talking about anymore. And they're so out of touch with shit, but they think that just because they're a national grandmaster judge or whatever it may be, they think that just carries weight. I think they stopped practicing and stopped giving a shit a long time ago.
Yeah, I wonder about accountability when it comes to poor score sheets. I've never run a competition over 50 entries. I know you have. So I don't know how feasible it is for organizers to afterward sort through score sheets and say, this is not up to snuff, and talk to that judge and call them out. Do you think that happens at all?
It doesn't happen. And I think one of the things, going back to the organizers, that you need to do, I was going to bring this point up too. Well, one of the things I do as a person who comes, I give the judge feedback. I feel confident enough about my skills. I don't care what the rank of the judge is. I'm confident that you filled out a shitty score sheet or you didn't have a clue what you're talking about. I've even called out a couple of judges and said that I can tell you that you were fatigued and you got this flight like late in the day just by what you wrote on, and they're like, emailed me back and be like, yep, it was a late in the day flight, blah, blah, blah. My palate was fatigued. I probably should have told the organizer that I shouldn't have judged that flight. Now, to me, comps are like I don't really care per se. If it wins, it wins. I'm on to the next one as soon as I put that thing in the mill. And if I don't recognize the name on the score sheet, or if the score sheet is not like really, really bad, I don't read every single one, but the bad ones just really stand out to me. Like if you're going to give somebody a 25, every line on that score sheet better be filled out, in my opinion. But if I see a 25 and I see like one or two words in the section, okay, now that piqued my interest, because my exercise is I look at the score and just kind of eye up to see how much feedback is in the section. Now, if there's a lot of feedback, we all have to know that taste is subjective. Okay, that judge may not have gotten it or whatever it may be. On to the next one. But if I see a 25 and there's two words in one of the section, I'm emailing that judge. Or if it's a judge that I know and they were just way off base, not whether they liked the mead or not. They were just way, way wrong. I'm like, hey, you didn't consider this. That's your opinion. That's not what that honey is supposed to taste like. I correct a lot of stuff like that on score sheets. Like, this honey is supposed to taste like that. It's like, okay, you're going to tell me how honey's supposed to taste? That's what you're tasting. That doesn't make it right or wrong. But you can't say that a given honey tastes like this every single time. There's very few honeys you can say that for.
I wonder, what do you think good feedback on a score sheet should look like? Because I wonder about, so say you have a mead that's just really not that complex. Maybe it's clean and crisp and well made, and it's got one ingredient. I mean, if that score sheet doesn't have every line filled out, is that a bad score sheet? Maybe it's a mead.
No, it's not. You just said it. I put that on score sheet. This is a well-made mead. It's clean. It's everything comes through, but it lacks complexity compared to some of the other meads that I've tasted in this flight. I have no problem putting that on a score sheet.
I think it goes the other way too, because I think there's a perception that some judges think the more I can write on here, the better. And that what they write might be totally off base. It might be totally irrelevant, but there's this mindset of, people that enter this competition are paying their $7 to $10 for their entry fee, and this is the only thing they get from it. So let me make sure that I put as many words on there as possible. I mean, what do you think about how full does it have to be? Some people just think full is better.
I don't agree with that. I think it's more the quality of the content. Let's take Dr. England for example. He doesn't write a lot on the score sheet, but what he writes on the score sheets is great. Same thing with my friend Dennis Mitchell, who I think is an excellent all-around judge. He doesn't write much on the score sheet, but the quality and the content of what he writes is awesome. Same thing with Gordon. Gordon doesn't write a lot on score sheets, but he chooses his words very carefully. And it's not like gobbledygook, he's giving you what you need to get better. I don't believe in writing on a score sheet for the sake of writing. But once again, if you're going to give somebody a 25, there should be more than two words there. So don't confuse the lack of words that I'm saying for, I want people to fill out the whole section. You can't tell somebody what they did wrong in 2 words. We don't have that level of communication right now.
Yeah, so definitely when there's problems, it just takes more to explain. So, I mean, if it's that much of a problematic mead to warrant a low score like that, like you got to have more to back it up, right? You got to write an explanation.
I agree.
So to kind of step back generally, the way that comps are structured, so most have, judging pairs, and it goes on to a mini boss, and those go on to best of show. I want to get kind of your more loose opinion on the general structure of competitions. What do you think should change there? Do you think, because I've seen suggestions, maybe judges should work entirely independently, and send meads on? Like, do you think there's overall, the way competitions are structured, do you see any big changes you'd want to see?
Only thing I would want to see, and I got this from Bruce Berger, Dr. England, and Fuddy and Brian Joas. I think if, and we implemented this at the Mazer Cup last year, and I think it made a huge difference. I would like to see, if you are judging a flight, you don't do the mini boss. I can tell you right now that made a huge, huge difference. I know some comps are doing that, because you get, another one of my issues with judging is people championing meads. That's why people should just shut the hell up. Oh, this mead was wonderful. Here, taste a little of this. That's another thing we implemented at the Mazer Cup. You can't take the mead out of the room. You can't just go walk around sharing the beverage with people. You can't contaminate the judging pool.
So the idea with that structural change, the people who are judging mini boss haven't done any other judging in that flight, and so they're coming in with there's no chance of them championing a mead saying, I had this earlier, it's great.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, that's neat. I think that's a good idea. Now that you mentioned Bruce and Brian and those guys, I've entered a lot of comps in the last couple of years, and I think this year at Midwinter was definitely the best score sheets, the best quality of judging that I've experienced at a comp in the last couple of years. I thought Midwinter did fantastic with, my experience as an entrant. I was really impressed with the quality.
Midwinter, Minnesota Mash Out, those guys do, they do a good job in the Sugar Belt, man. Bruce, Brian, Dr. England, those guys know their stuff. Those guys represent, in my opinion, everything that's right with the BJCP.
Nice. Yeah, I think I agree. I want to see more people pick up the habits and practices that these people are putting out there. So I want to pivot and talk more specifically about you and, things that you've entered. So I know that you have a reputation for making meads with a long list of ingredients, maybe with 3 or 4 fruits and 3 to 5 spices, and maybe they're not all, at a high, perception threshold. Maybe you didn't add much of them, but I'm thinking about when meads that have a long list of ingredients come across a judge's table. What is your advice for judges if they get a mead plopped in front of them and it's got 5 fruits and 5 spices? Like, do you have any advice for how to approach those meads for those judges?
Yeah, and I'm going to approach this from 2 perspectives. So I'm going to approach it from the judging perspective and what I've learned over the years from doing that, because I have changed some things. It's all about incorporation. But the problem with mead, once again, is a lot of judges aren't familiar with a lot of those ingredients, and they don't think about the overall body of work as a whole. So I would like to tell the judges to look at the body of work as a whole. It's one of the reasons why I don't really do that anymore. Like, if I got a mead with 4 berries in it, I just put mixed berries. Unless one of them really stands out, I'll put black raspberries and other mixed berries and multiple honey varietals or something like that. Even if I can't pick up the honey like Lahua or Tupelo or something like that, I'll just put various honeys. So simplifying it for the judges, I've found has worked better for me over the years, and just not listen it, because I think that they get too fixated on, which I think is just fucking stupid. They get so fixated on if you put black raspberries first or in the middle, or if you put, Tupelo honey first. Where did this stupid shit come from? It's like, come on, man. It's like if I put two row Pilsner and if I did caramel, 2-row and Pilsner in an IPA, are you gonna fucking ding me for that? No, they're not. They're not. But if you put something like that on a mead, it's like, once again, we're the redheaded stepchildren, of the judging world. We got to do everything right. We got to dance in heels in a dress backwards and smile the whole time to get a good score.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think as an entrant, when you've been, kicked once or twice by judges who want to really hone in on one, like say, because I've seen meads where there's, I used a chai spice blend, and they'll list maybe the 5 spices they use in the blend. I think you and I both know judges who are going to say, this needs 10% cinnamon, or I don't get the clove, or it's ridiculous, right?
You know what? And that brings me to my next judging pet peeve. Is one of the reasons pre-COVID why I started to enter less comps, because I haven't entered a lot of comps in the last 2 years, because winning another medal at Midwinter or Minnesota Mashout or whatever, it doesn't matter to me at that point, so how do I change or help people become better judges in regards to me? You go to the comps. We need people in their local comps who continually win at these comps to stop entering the damn comp and to help judge the comp. You got 12 damn medals from the same damn comp. Stop. Help out. Help give other people a chance. It's okay. People will still remember you are a good whatever. Put your servant hat on. We really, really need some of these top mead makers to stop entering their local comps and to judge and to help educate the judging pool too as well. Because I'm confident I've gone to a lot of comps and helped a lot of people medal who wouldn't have medaled if I wouldn't have been there to help talk judges through stuff, or educate judges on honey, or educate judges on fruit. Because you had guys at the table sometimes like, well, I was like, well, it doesn't taste like that. It's not supposed to taste like that. This is what it tastes like, and whatever. It's like, there's nothing wrong with what you're tasting. That's what it's supposed to taste like. And the people who have the knowledge just want to keep entering in local comps. If you don't take anything from this conversation that I'm having from you, no matter what other question you ask, before this or after this, I will beg local mead makers to stop entering your local comp, stop it being selfish, and help judge your local comps and help educate the mead pool so we can bring the whole level of mead knowledge up for the whole entire comp.
Yeah, there's plenty of places you can send your stuff. So you're saying with your local stuff, just put your servant hat on, send your stuff elsewhere, suck it up, right?
Yep.
Okay. So we touched on this topic a little bit earlier, but I know you and I both experienced entering meads, say to make the simplest example, a traditional mead where maybe it's not orange blossom, maybe it's not this benchmark honey that 90% of judges should know what that character is like. And so you're entering an unusual honey. I think you've told me the example of entering sourwood trad places and people don't know what that character is like, and they totally misattribute that honey varietal character to a process flaw or something else. So does this drive you nuts like it does me? And do you have any other comments on, is it just people just need to buy honeys, taste honeys? They just got to put the sensory work in for this to get better?
It's a combination of both. It's people got to do the sensory work, but you got to understand that taste is subjective. there's certain honeys, there's certain traditionals that some people are just not going to pick up certain characters. It's the same in beer, it's the same in cider, it's just one of those things.
Yeah, I think it just bugs me when it's something that's very typical for that honey, but it's maybe, oh, they think you had say you had some acetaldehyde, maybe you had a yeast issue because maybe they pick up some green apple notes that maybe that honey has that, and it's not a process issue. So I just think some of these things are hard to sort through. Like, as a judge, what do you attribute to the honey? The next question I want to ask is like yeast character. So how, as a judge, if you're sitting down, do you have any advice for how you can sort through and know when something might be a character that's contributed from the yeast versus another ingredient or the honey?
I get access a lot about honey and yeast and characteristics and stuff like that. I tell people to focus on good and bad. And what I mean by that is it clean? Are you getting good, clean aromatics? If so, what are they? Are you getting tropical? Are you getting stone fruit? Are you getting pear? Are you getting berry? Whatever it may be. If you're getting phenols or plastic or too much earthiness or too much dankness, that just wasn't pleasant to you at that given time. There's nothing wrong with that, because once again, taste is subjective. So and I'm gonna always come back to that. It's that taste is subjective, but at the same time, your sensory skills should be able to tell you, regardless if it's a mead, beer, cider, wine, whatever, if something is cleanly fermented, am I getting clean aromatics without any sulfur or any other negative issue? I should be able to describe it based upon sensory.
That's probably a good way to approach it, to fall back on that good or bad, right? Like, if it's something that I don't know, is I can attribute it to this, that, or the other, and I can't put my finger on where it's coming from, I fall back on, does this beverage work? Is it good or bad? Is it a pleasant expression of a mead that I'm drinking right now? So I think that's a good way to put it. I think we're getting close to maybe taking a break and drinking some mead, but do you have any other final comments you want to throw in on these topics, Carvin?
No, like I said, I wanted to be completely blind, to the call. I didn't want to have the questions ahead of time. I believe in speaking from the heart and speaking off the cuff and just saying what comes to mind, knowing that I'm probably going to piss some people off in the meantime, but I don't have any problems backing up anything I've said on this call.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, for full disclosure, Carvin declined to have any foreknowledge of the questions. So, and I think, I appreciate your honest feedback on these topics, but I think we should maybe take a brief break and then drink some mead. What do you think?
I think that would be a good thing. I'm going to put you on pause, get all set up here, and then just go from there.
All right. So we are drinking a mead. You want to tell us about it, Carvin?
Yeah. So I have not had this mead before. So Josh picked this mead out. It's from a good friend of mine, Billy Belts, and Lost Cause Meadery. The name of the mead is 9 Deaths. To tell you that I have not had it before, I'm reading what's in the mead, which is Pasili peppers, Mesco, Morado, Ancho, Habanero, Mulatto, Pinquin, and Casabella, and Arbol chilies. So I think that's the 9 deaths that he's talking about. I feel Spanish, and I probably massacred a lot of those names, but it's about the body of work. And while we're talking about body of work, we're kind of going to do this in an informal. And when I'm looking at a body of work, anything that I'm drinking, a mead, a beer, a cider, a wine, I look for the beauty. If you're looking for the beauty and the positive things in the beverage and the art that's in front of you, the flaws are just going to come out. You know, one of my issues, and hopefully my BJCP friends don't stab me in the kidney after this, is I think the BJCP is a flaws first mentality, always looking for flaws. I like to look for the beauty. When you're looking for the beauty, the flaws just surface. So,
you have any flaming bags of dog crap are outside your doorstep in the next few weeks?
So, don't do that. So let's talk about how I taste meads. I just opened this mead up. I like to give it a few swirls. I like to let it open up. I find with just like wine, some meads need to be opened up. There are certain meads that, especially if they have some VA and some phenols, or even some fusels, I find if you decant them like you decant a wine, it mellows those flavors out, and those aromatics and the flavors out so as well. So I'm just gonna swirl this around a little bit. I like to tilt the glass away from me to look at the color. I get a better visual indication of the colors when I tilt the glass away from me. So I just did that. Now I'm going in for the nose. When I do nose, I like to leave my mouth a little open so I can get some retro in there. I find that I pick up more aromatics on the exhale than the inhale. When I exhale, I like to move part of my nose away from the glass so I'm not exhaling in the glass. So go ahead, Josh.
I'm going to say, when you talk about retronasal, I'm used to thinking of that as, after I swallow and, kind of the exhale on swallowing. But you even kind of do some of that just with straight aroma before taking a sip, huh? So you're trying to intentionally do some inhale through your nose and you exhale through your mouth or back through your nose.
Yeah.
So what notes are you getting on the aroma on this guy?
I get caramel, cherry. I get a little lychee, brown sugar, a little spice, some earthiness, almost like it just rained out in a desert.
I can't sympathize with that, Minnesota, but sure.
I can get a crazy amount, knowing that with the peppers that he has in here, I'm getting a crazy amount of berry. So berry, like boysenberry, marionberry.
Yeah, there's some fruitiness in there for sure. It's kind of interesting. I know from things I've seen Billy post, it seems like he's really passionate about some of these unique peppers and the character that they get. It does state on the bottle that the honey varietal is avocado blossom. It's 13%.
I think the honey does a great job of supporting the peppers. Me and Billy shared a love of the avocado. I think some of that brown sugar and caramel that you're getting comes from the avocado blossom, the honey itself.
So clearly an example of, if you had something similar come across your judging table, you'd be kind of frowned upon to try to pick out each individual pepper and say, I don't get enough of this one, or I get too much of that one. Like, that's that way too nitpicky stuff, right?
Great. It's the body of work as a whole. I listen to the ingredients when, the head judge or whatever is reading them off or whatever it may be. But if it's a long list, I kind of ignore the list and go by the body of work. Then I go back and read the list when I'm done with my aromatics and my taste to see, if I picked up something, if it's a strong taste or if it's a subtle taste. But, the body of work that you have in front of you tells you that it's just well integrated. It's like when you make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and it's well made. You get both. It's well integrated.
It's just good, right? It's not like, ooh, jelly, ooh.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, wow, this is really enjoyable.
So from the palate perspective, let's get into the acids and tannins.
Mm-hmm.
I think the spiciness is making it seem more acidic than what it really is. It's kind of like, you have something there, because I actually think that this is, kind of, from a tannin perspective, the tannins are like really soft. I think what you're really getting is the spice. This is a very light to maybe light medium body. The body, it doesn't come across as heavy or viscous.
Yeah, and would you say acid low or medium, or?
I would say medium, but going a little bit to the low side too as well. So
yeah, that heat does a lot of heavy lifting for balance.
Yeah, this is one of these meads where, people always say, you got to do acid adjustments on every mead. You got to all this draw line in the sand stuff. I think this is actually a mead that if you would have used too much in here, it would have wrecked your mouth.
It'd be rough. Yeah, it's amazing how the spice doesn't, like the heat doesn't hit you in one spot. It's really like lighting up my entire mouth. It's pretty interesting. That's what, like when I worked with peppers, that's kind of the fun part about peppers, right? Some of them are like a really quick but short heat. Some are like a delayed but long slow burn. Like, yeah, that's what's really cool about like a blend like this. That many.
Man, the more I drink this, I'm getting a crazy amount of chocolate on the finish.
It's like a mole like cake, right? It's like
it's like one of those chocolate covered cherry things, and it's crazy that you're getting that from the peppers.
Yeah, it's like the finish and aftertaste is so much like chocolate, and I agree, chocolate, cherry, and heat. It's really cool.
There's something on the nose that I'm trying to put my.
There's like a character in the nose that's not like pepper spice. It's almost like a baking spice.
Yeah, I'm getting some like anise, some allspice type stuff there, but when I said that wet desert, it almost comes across to me as like, I don't know, like compost.
Like a dried plant matter kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I hear about wine people talk a lot about minerality and like stony minerality, things like that. And when they talk about like wet, like rain on hot, wet concrete, like characteristics like that, like I wonder, is that part of that rain in the desert thing you're talking about, or more that dried plant matter kind of thing?
Dried plant matter. The thing that was throwing me off about this that I said I couldn't put a word to, it comes across almost like Band-Aid and iodine.
Flavor and aroma?
Just aroma. The flavor, a little bit of spice, chocolate, baking spices, anise, cherry, dark fruit, caramel, brown sugar. That's what I get. I get the spice on the front, then I get all those flavors on the back. I like how the spice hits you, but the taste gets you at the end.
It's funny, like I get a lot of spice that lingers into the end, but it's kind of weird because it's kind of playing this role, like you said, like acid, where it's like giving the aftertaste like a weird balance. Like if acid like lingered as long as heat does, which I guess sometimes it does.
So I don't know if you did this, but one of the things, this mead to me tastes two different ways. So like if you just take a sip, that's where I get the spice, the chocolate, the cherry, the brown sugar. But if you take a sip and use more of your retro and like spray it over your palate, the complexity of the mead changes, and so does the spice level. So like if you like suck it over your palate, do you see how much more spice you get?
Yeah, one of the first sips I took, I did a lot of aerating like that, where I sucked in, and like, yeah, the heat really takes off. Versus, you're right, if you do very little manipulation in your mouth, you just take a sip and swallow, like it's a real mild spice that it's up front and there's not much around, right?
The aeration completely changes it. And that's why when I tell people when I'm tasting their meads, I always tell them, I'm not your consumer. Because I'm going to drink your mead a completely different way than most consumers. The consumer is just going to sip it. Most of them aren't going to aerate it and spray it over their palate, whatever, Folks like you and I are very niche consumers, or niche, whatever you want to call it. So I always tell people, take my feedback with a grain of salt.
Right. But I think it's good feedback because, when we're doing these interviews and these discussions with an effort to try to improve quality of mead judging, like these are things judges should do, right? You should let it touch every part of your palate. You should aerate it.
They should go to UC Davis and educate themselves on sensory analysis. They should go fishing one less weekend or deer hunting one less weekend and invest in being a better judge and get trained. But I also think, the AMMA, BJCP, and other organizations should make it easier for these folks to be trained.
Well, and to be honest, that's part of the reason I want to do these videos, because everybody should go to UC Davis. Very few people are going to, so let's make something pretty easy to consume and palatable that's going to at least nudge the bar a little bit.
I agree. I think, and I've been an advocate of this for years, I think just, two people in the beverage. We're going to say guys. I don't want the BLM or what other people sending me nasty emails. Two people with a beverage, different experiences level, 15 minutes. Hey, how you doing? How are the kids? Blah, blah, blah. Put the beverage in front of them. Let's taste it. Done. Post a whole series of videos on somebody's site. None of that fluffy stuff. No hour-and-a-half podcast. And people could just use it as a reference. I don't think that'd take too much work.
Yeah, let's have you send me like half your cellar and we'll just do it that way. Just you and I. We'll do a whole series of these.
That's my doomsday cellar, bro.
Oh, you got more than you need.
Okay. Let's get back to Billy's awesome body of work here. The complexity that you get from these peppers is just mind-blowing. I would see a novice mead judge dinging Billy for, he had to put some fruit in here. He had to put like some brown sugar and stuff like that. Them not knowing avocado blossom honey brings that to the party would completely, have an impact on it. Whereas if you just appreciated the body of work, regardless of your honey knowledge, and be like, okay, that's amazing. Let me not try to insert my personal opinion too negatively and ruin the body of work. Because once again, I'm always looking for the beauty. If I find a flaw in your mead, you have to understand anytime I get in front of a beverage, I am never looking for a flaw. All I want to do is just be like a big fluffy white rabbit with rainbows, and I'm just thinking beauty. I want to like treat this beverage like a Picasso. And I go into everything like that. I am not looking for nothing but everything that you did right. And the wrong just gets in the way of the right. And that's how I write a score sheet.
Yeah, in your opinion, you don't have to really dive into that first. Like, yeah, I think that's a beautiful way to put it. It's surprising how much, like we talked about the chocolate and the cherry, how much of that character you can get, I assume, from these peppers. You wouldn't assume, would you assume much chocolate from avocado blossom? I've had it a few times. You have a way more experience with it than I do. So, I mean, do you want to talk about avocado? Like what range of expression what kind of descriptors have you seen come out of avocado?
I get more caramel and brown sugar. I think some of that chocolate is coming from those darker peppers that he's using.
Sure.
In mead, kind of like almost like smoky campfire. I know a couple of those peppers on the list I've used. I think mulatto and a couple other from the recommendations of Dr. England.
Yeah.
So since I've used them, I know that some of that smokiness chocolate is coming from the peppers that he using here. But avocado blossom gives me a lot of caramel, brown sugar with like hints of butterscotch. Mm-hmm. I do get some berry character from avocado blossom, but that's only with certain yeast like D21, which I think imparts crazy berry character if fermented at high temperatures.
Well, how high are you talking?
Above 78.
Yeah, I haven't done that. I've done mostly low mid 60s, and I get mostly nuttiness for me out of D21.
I can't tell you the last time I fermented below 75.
Just because you like it that way, you get more character, or because it's Arizona?
Everybody else is fermenting below 75.
It's more.
I get different flavor profiles and different taste profiles doing stuff that nobody else does. If I want a mead that tastes like everybody else's mead, I can do the same thing. But I like the flavors at high temperatures. I like it a lot.
Yeah. So the mead world's going to zig and Carvin's going to zag here. So I remember Billy talking about some of these peppers, and I don't know which one it was, but I think one was like an unsmoked chipotle. Do you know, is that the Pasilla de Oaxaca or the Merida? You said you worked with a couple.
I'm not familiar enough with peppers to comment on that.
Okay.
But I do know and once again, I don't have my notes in front of me, but I got a mead that has some of the smokiness and chocolate notes based upon one or two of these peppers. Just amazingly done.
Yeah, it's a really
spice is hard to sell. These kind of meads don't move.
Spicy meads?
No, they don't move. From talking to professional mead makers, spiciness doesn't sell.
I think they're some of the most. I mean, I've made a fair amount of them, but I think they're some of the most fun ones to make and drink as a home mead maker, and some of the most beautiful ones to counter in comps. Like, again, there's not a lot of other spicy alcoholic beverages out there. So I think it's super interesting.
It's really good.
So definitely lots of layers. I think it's really well balanced. I think the sweetness, it's not, I mean, it's, for the amount of heat that you would expect just reading the label, I would expect like a real heavy sweetness to try to offset the peppers, and it's not. I mean, it's.
We could probably talk to Billy, but I think there's sweetness and then there's perceived sweetness. I think that this mead is sweetened to 1060, but the perceived sweetness is 1020 to 1030.
Do you perceive any oak?
No, I don't. I think a mead of this nature, the oak would actually take away from the body of work.
Just from the tannin perspective, or like the vanilla?
From a tannin perspective.
Yeah.
If I used oak in this mead, it would be in primary.
Yeah.
To give it a fuller mouthfeel. If I was going to be nitpicky about anything with this mead, it has a flat, boring mouthfeel. It could be fuller, almost like a cab. Think of a cab. Like it could, and you would get that from a little bit more tannins drying out that mouth and giving it a perception of a fuller body.
Yeah. I mean, I think you can detect some of that gravity level with the mouthfeel. I definitely wouldn't call it thin-bodied. I mean, I think you can tell that there's a substantial amount of sugar there, but I think you make a good comment about the perceived sweetness, because that heat's cutting it so much. You're probably going to guess wrong, when you guess what it actually is for final gravity.
We're gonna have to message him together, because I think he back sweetened it to 1060, and then but it's all about perception. Once again, it's so, for example, like it's my chestnut blossom that either placed first or second at Mazer the year before, 2 years ago. I entered that mead as dry. It finished at 1020.
I want to put my guess. I'm gonna go a little higher, not much higher, 1070. I'll say. I think you're pretty close.
Yeah.
Any other comments you want to make on this guy?
No.
That heat doesn't hurt you.
No, it doesn't. It just lingers there, and that's what's great about it. He took some really complex peppers. The lack of spiciness really makes this mead, and it really does not destroy your palate to where you can enjoy the body of work that's in front of you and get a whole range of tastes. This is definitely something you don't want to aerate in your mouth because it turns the spiciness level up 10x to me. But if you just gonna sip this, I can see myself sipping this with a cigar and having a really, really nice evening.
I mean, and you can see, we all respect Billy a ton. You can see the thoughtful intent with how he created this, right? He's looking at this. He has these peppers. He says, these peppers give me a beautiful range of heat, but there's a lot of neat, dark flavors coming out of them too. Avocado honey, it's smart, super smart, really well made.
Yeah, Billy's doing some world-class stuff, man.
All right, I think that does it. Any other comments, Carvin?
No, hey, I appreciate the opportunity. Hopefully I didn't hurt anybody's feelings. If I did, life's cold, get a jacket. You'll see me at a comp. Come up to me and we can talk about it.
Yeah, just let me know. Send me a message how many death threats you get after it's posted. So
they know where to find me. It's not like I'm hard to find at a comp.
Yeah. But no, thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing your knowledge. You've said it plenty of times out there that knowledge is the one thing that you can give away and still retain. And I think you embody that. And we all appreciate you. And thank you for sharing your knowledge.
You bet. Hey, great. And thank you once again. And I appreciate the opportunity.
All right. Cheers, Carvin.
All right. Cheers.